Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the Alfa Romeo brand. Now, you might be thinking, why the hell are you talking about the Alfa Romeo brand? And honestly, there's a lot to do with Mopar. Not just because it's a Stellantis brand, but if you buy an accessory or a part for an Alfa Romeo, it's branded with the Mopar logo because obviously FCA made it so Mopar was the official, parts and accessory distributor for all of their core FCA cars. As well as Alfa Romeo is the cousin of Dodge because they share a lot of the same architectures, some of the same engines, and you learn a lot from the European brands. Whether you think so or not, we learn a lot of what's going on in the future for America from the European brands. So I posted this article yesterday on Mopar Insiders, and the reason why I'm talking about this is it's a drastic change for Alfa Romeo. Now, if you know anything about Alfa Romeo now, Alfa Romeo sales are at basically an all-time low. They, let's put it this way. Chrysler sold more minivans last year in the U.S. than Alfa Romeo did vehicles worldwide. It's pretty sad. So Alfa Romeo needs all the help that it, can take right now in changing the brand around. And if you remember, back in 2021, Alfa Romeo basically came out and said, hey, we're going to be an all-electric brand by 2027. Last fall, they came out and said, hey, we're changing that. It's not working. There's huge pushback against EVs in the EU because they're too expensive. There's pushback in the US about EVs because there's not an infrastructure strong enough to have it, and they're too expensive. So now we're going to go to electric, hybrid, and even internal combustion engines across the globe. So that was huge news. Huge news. And the dealers here in North America were extremely thrilled because they were all ticked off at Alfa Romeo for switching to an all-EV platform. And then most of those dealers are Fiat dealers as well. So if you look at them, they have the 500e, which obviously is not selling well at all. So it made a lot of people happy. But this past week we learned a lot because Auto Express UK sat down with the CEO for Alfa Romeo and sat down with their new head of marketing. Actually, he's not new. He's been the marketing director. But anyways, they talked to him about what's coming forward. And one of the big things was that the next generation Alfa Romeo Giulia and Stelvio Quadrifoglio were going to continue to have gas engines in them. Now, that's a huge change. Huge change because we had originally heard that they were going all EV and that the new Quadrifoglio models were going to be all electric with over 1,000 horsepower. They were boasting about it less than a year and a half ago. What makes it very interesting for us in North America is the fact that our sources had told us over at, our sources, we posted this before on Mopar Insiders, that they were telling us that the Quadrifoglio Stelvio model was going to be the first model to make its debut in North America in 2026. They were going to launch the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio as the first vehicle for Stelvio, the new Stelvio. And the very important part of that was it was going to be sharing the same powertrain as the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT Banshee. So the Stelvio Quadrifoglio was supposed to share its 800-volt architecture, was supposed to share its same EDM setup, all-wheel drive platform, as well as its multi-speed transmission, that eRupt transmission that Tim Kuniskis had basically talked about at the Dodge Speed Weeks event back in 2022. So there was a lot of stuff going on that we had been hearing that, hey, basically this is going to be a Dodge Charger Daytona SRT Banshee, but in Italian clothes. And now it's going to change completely. So the last few months I've been telling you guys that everything's been kind of changing really quick over at Stellantis, and they're doing studies and they're changing everything as fast as they can, and this is one of the programs, and that's why I thought it was important to talk about, because not only does it affect what's going on in the EU, it's affecting what's going to happen here in North America. So I want to go through some of these quotes. The very first quote I'm going to go through is from the new Alfa Romeo CEO. Sorry, I can't talk. And he basically said, we're going to continue to give our clients what they want. Now, if that sounds familiar, basically, Antonio Filosa, the COO for North America, had a town hall, from what we heard, with the like basically everybody at CTC and throughout the company over here, and basically said, hey, we're going to start building products that people want. It's the exact same slogan. Exact same slogan. So very interesting. Another thing that we're going to hear is, again, Cristiano Furiel, who's the head of marketing and communications. He said a lot to them. So he basically started off with saying that, Quadrifoglio buyers value the sound and feel of a traditional engine. He goes, personally, I don't see a Quadrifoglio EV. I see a Quadrifoglio which has the sound of a real engine. Okay, so we've seen the Alfa Romeo, or what is it, the Abarth 500E, basically have kind of the same thing like the Fratonic chambered exhaust, but it's just speakers, but it actually sounds like an internal combustion engine. So you might think like, oh, they could be doing that. But what he added was we looked at the data every day, and if you see the data of the high performance electric car market, it's different from what we or anyone thought it would be 3 or 4 years ago. So if you remember the Dodge Charger Daytona, SRT Banshee was shown a few years ago. And, back then everything was going to be, hey, EV is the way to go and all that. And people are stepping away from EVs mainly because of the cost. The battery packs, to replace a battery pack is almost 50% of the car in a lot of cases. So there's just a lot of things going on right now. Tesla is one of those few niches that can get away with how they do things because they build everything in-house. They build all their motors in-house. They build their battery packs in-house. And they've got it very efficient so they can build stuff at really low cost where they can pretty much undercut anybody. The thing is with these big automakers, they have to have suppliers and stuff, and everything costs a lot more. And we're seeing that there's a lot of pushback from EVs. And if you want an EV, Tesla and a few of the automakers, which are actually losing money on their EVs, Tesla's really the only one that's really making money on EVs, people are flocking to them. So it makes kind of a lot of sense. If we look at what he says about the Stella Large platform, basically, again, we talked about, they're going to go to gasoline, hybrid, and electric. He said both models, so the Stelvio and Quadrifoglio, he said the good thing is they're on a platform that was developed to be a multi-energy architecture. So there's zero problem in adapting it to any kind of engine. So that's kind of good. And it kind of goes away from what we've heard before, because we heard that, certain powertrains wouldn't work with, like even the Dodge Charger Daytona, which seems to be the wrong thing. Like they were kind of misleading us. Now they were asking him about a return to twin turbo V6 power. And right now, the outgoing cars, because they're going to end production of the current Quadrifoglio here very quick in Europe, this is the 2.9 liter twin turbo V6. Now, I actually drove a Stelvio Quadrifoglio back in 2021. Chrysler sent me one for the week, and it was actually I was really impressed with the performance of it. 505 horsepower, and it seems like it was a lot more. I mean, that thing got up and went. I was really impressed with the overall power of it. But a lot of people love the twin turbo V6 engine over there, and this one's Ferrari derivative. So we know that Ferrari kind of, separated ties with Maserati. So there's a lot of possibilities going out there. But what he said about this twin turbo V6 was kind of interesting. He said, when asked about the possibility of keeping the engine, he responded, you said something which is not far from our thoughts. He went on to further say that if they stick to a 6-cylinder engine, he kind of basically suggested that they might, by saying, if you express a high power version for Stelvio or Giulia, which by the way are big cars, I would not see 2, 3, or 4 cylinders in there. So that's very interesting. And then the very last thing he had to say was that they asked him about hybrid options, in the base model cars. Could it be a hybrid model? Even if there's a hybrid high performance one, where does he see it? He goes, there are on the table a couple of alternatives at the moment. Once we finalize the picture worldwide, then we will press a button on alternative A or alternative B. So it was very interesting what he said, because what we're thinking and what I'm thinking is that they might not return to the 2.9 liter V6, the twin turbo one. Honestly, if they have to pull from their engine lineup, the Netturno V6 from Maserati might be the way. It's a twin turbo 3 liter V6 engine, similar to this, but way more high-tech, way more modern. And it puts out 620 horsepower. So you got 115 horsepower more with not much bigger displacement. It's built in Italy, and it just makes sense that, they might go to that because Ferrari's trying to keep separate as more of its own kind of deal. Now, John Elkann is the chairman or the CEO of Ferrari as well. So there could be something worked out that they continue with this engine, but I don't know. I mean, they've introduced high performance models of the Quadrifoglios before with the GTA, and that one had 500, well, the GTA, what was it? The GTA V. They had 504, or no, sorry, GTA M. They had 540 horsepower versions of those cars. So the Naturno engine, which, produces 620 horsepower, would make a lot of sense. Maserati already puts them in almost all their cars. That's really their to-go-to, engine for their newer cars, like the Gran Turismo, the Gran Cabrio, and the MC20. So it does make sense that Alfa might adopt that. Alfa actually did adopt that engine in their 33 Stradale limited edition car that they introduced last year. That's actually being delivered right around this time, which is based on the MC20. So it might make sense that we might see a Maserati engine in an Alfa Romeo. But nonetheless, it's big news especially for Alfa Romeo fans here in North America, because we're not going to have electric Quadrifoglio models. It's going to be gas powered, and it's going to be very unique because we've seen Dodge do a recent kind of turnaround where now we're hearing Hemi power is coming back to the Charger eventually. We're going to have to wait a while, but we're going to see a Hemi Charger again. Hopefully, we're going to see some other big changes too with other brands. And I'm hoping it's Chrysler. I'm really hoping it's Chrysler. So stay tuned. We're going to follow this. I know a lot of people really don't care about Alfa Romeo, but again, you learn a lot from the European brands and kind of what's going on with the company and what might be going on here. So stay tuned. I'll see you in the next video.